Oh yeah, another wrestling way too early lineup breakdown, and we have a really interesting one today in the transfer portal kings in Wisconsin, led by the one and only Chris Bono himself and his amazing staff of Seth Gross and John Reeder. Honestly, looking at Wisconsin with a microscope has been super interesting, but I am sure you all could have guessed that. The biggest news that really picked up the interest for them was probably the announcement that Taylor Lamont, an All-American from Utah Valley, is transferring in along with a pretty solid National Qualifier 157 Modell, using his last year of eligibility to return, and the same is true for their heavyweight Trent Hilger. However, like I said, really looking under the hood and deep at this team, I think there is a ton more to talk about that we are just at the cups of about to dive into. For starters though, hi everyone, my name is Tanner, and welcome to TrueTan Wrestling. If you have your own thoughts on the Wisconsin lineup, feel free to send it along in the comment section below. Also, if you end up enjoying this video, I would really appreciate a like, or if you love it, feel free to hit that subscribe button as well. And now without further ado, let's talk about the Badgers in Wisconsin. Oh, one more thing, I know I've only done Big Ten team breakdown so far, but I promise Oklahoma State, Missouri, Stanford, all the comments you guys have been sending, I will eventually do. It just takes a little bit, especially when there's big events like Final X going on and stuff like that. So if you have your own team, please send them in the comment section below. I promise it's added to the schedule. Plus, in retrospect, we have until the start of next season, so I think we got some time. One thing I think we can all correlate for most of the massive changes and success in Wisconsin wrestling is probably attributed to our man Chris Bono himself. I'm sure Wisconsin fans love hearing about him, and I'm sure non-Wisconsin fans hate seeing him and hate hearing about him because all the wrestlers or associates really talk about him in the highest light and how much he does. The dude is a stud in all aspects, and I think that's pretty simple to see. He recruits well, he gets well-balanced transferred athletes, and of course, he has developed some athletes above and beyond their potential. For someone who got the job in 2018, he has built Wisconsin to easily a top 5 Big Ten team for most of the years he's been there except for 2021, but even after a bad year like that, he rebuilt to an extremely fast pace. To further back that up, they went from a pretty down season to finishing in 14th place with 3 All-Americans, compared to 2021 where they finished in 23rd with only 2 low All-Americans and only 4 national qualifiers. This is also good news because they are essentially returning everyone except 174 and 184, but they are gaining some people who could maybe be massive upgrades. So let's just sit back and start talking about it with one of their most interesting weights with a lot of possibilities in 125. We could potentially see 2 All-Americans battling out for the 125 spot. Starting with Barnett, a 2-time All-American placing 8th in 2021 and now 7th in 2022. I would argue he would be way more consistent in 2022 season, but there was a massive amount more data to back that claim up since 2021 was a shorter season. Barnett, I truly believe, did get better, winning some really high quality matches to make the Big Ten finals, and then wrestled back to avenge a loss from the second round of NCAAs to place 7th this year with a huge pin over high quality Kaler from Oregon State. Barnett will more than likely be the guy again in my opinion this year, but there is a different outcome that can occur that is extremely interesting. I'm obviously talking about the incoming transfer I've been alluding to in Taylor Lamont. Lamont is also an All-American from 2021 and a semi-finalist for that matter, but in 2022 he barely wrestled and did not All-American. There's also heavy rumors of him going up to 133. However, if he would want to take the 125 field on one last time, Barnett has a red shirt available, so he could slide right in there with little conflict. Speaking of 133 though, let's talk about it, shall we? Once again, Lamont is now the favorite to start, but there is several other options that I'd like to mention at this point. We already know most of Lamont's story, but his 1 year at 133 in 2020 was fine to say the least, but not as stellar as some of his 125 seasons. There is also 2-time national qualifier Berwick, who has been the guy for the Badgers for the past 2 years. He was a high recruit out of high school, and I think he could make this an interesting roster battle. Fun fact, both seasons he qualified for the national tournament, he ended up with a losing record, which is extremely rare. And I'm not trying to insult him by any means, I just think it's really interesting, and honestly it's showing that he's peaking at the right time, I guess. Only other person to kind of throw into the 125 and 133 mix is Rotondo, who never really had much success at 133, but has beat some quality guys at 125. He also did relatively well at 57 kilograms in freestyle before. Not sure if he can really make an impact here, but I wanted to mention him. Man, it is crazy to think of the web of possibilities at these 125 and 133 spots. But I think I'm done with them for now, so let's finally move on to 141, where the starter will once again probably be Joe Zargo. To be honest, after this season, I could see Zargo making some pretty big jumps. He has a lot of quality wins and only a few down performances, along with only really losing to of high quality wrestlers that are mostly leaving besides Tao Shahir of Northwestern. He is still young and is a great 141 option. Next is 149 with a fan favorite in Austin Gomez. Gomez was clearly the comeback kid last year, coming out of concussion retirement, which is not an easy injury to come back from, but he did not come back at 133. No, he bumped up 2 weight classes and would end up placing 4th, being a national finalist twice this season. I think Gomez is a really fun wrestler to watch, clearly. So even with heavy scouting, I don't really see him downgrading at all. 149 is not getting any weaker, so he will for sure have to keep evolving. But considering he took that long hiatus after his time at Iowa State, I have a feeling he'll be just fine. 157, the Badgers will get 6-year senior Modell back for his last season. Modell finally cracked into the show to become a national qualifier last year. His best win last year was easily over Braden Lee of Minnesota, and that is an elite win, so a ton of potential for Modell. Just to state some other options, they also have backup 157 Schrerenbrock, who beat a national qualifier in Johnny Lovett of Central Michigan, and also beat Buckeye almost starter Wilcox. Not saying he will beat Modell, but it's another pretty good option at 157 if they need it. 165 is another super fan favorite in 6th place All-American Dean Hamidi, who technically was the only true freshman placer, and very early on into the season, we could see something great was coming. His intensity in wrestling very quickly grew wrestling fans' eyes when he smashed through the Mat Man Open, where there were 2 returning All-Americans in that field, one of which he pinned in Hartman of Bucknell. His intense style, along with funky awareness, continues to help him win and confuse opponents, essentially. His best wins from last year include Caligiero of Harvard, a top 10 seed, Hartman, like I mentioned, by pinfall, who was a returning All-American, Adrian Wetzel of Pitt, the returning national finalist, and also beat another freshman star / All-American in Karchel of Ohio State. One thing to note, similar to 149, the 165 field, besides Alex Marinelli, is staying super strong, especially with the possibility of Iowa State star David Carr entering the weight. However, this field is even younger than most, so us wrestling fans will continue to be entertained for years on end. The next 2 weights for Wisconsin, they are taking on paper pretty big blows, but there is room for some improvement. Previously at 174, the Badgers had Kent State transfer McNally, who was a 3-time national qualifier. One of the years he actually made the round of 12 and was a top 8 seed. He unfortunately did not get an auto bid though this year to make the big show, along with not placing high enough at Big Tens. They're hoping to probably fill this hole with redshirt freshman Calhoun, who went 13-10 his past redshirt season. He has no major wins, but he has a few close decision losses to other relevant good starters. That might not sound too productive, but what I'm trying to say is he's not a bad option and he is very young, so there is room for improvement. However, they have one more top recruit coming in who could be a 174 or 184 option for them. The option I'm referring to is incoming freshman James Rowley, and I'm not saying he's going to be the next Dean Hamidi, but if he is ready to go, this could for sure be interesting for his development and for us wrestling fans to watch over the next season with him in the Wisconsin lineup. But it all really depends on how deep of a push they are trying to make and, well, if he's ready or not. At 184, the Badgers are losing multiple-time national qualifier Weiler, the transfer from Lehigh. Weiler always seemed to find a way to qualify for the national tournament, regardless of his record, which really just shows no matter how hard your schedule is, no matter who you're about to wrestle, you should just go out there and do it. If it's meant to be, it will happen. Weiler was also another national qualifier for the Badgers that had a losing record, by the way, so very impressive at somewhat peaking at the right time. It seems like Chris Bono's doing something else right. So like we start for Wisconsin will probably be Dow though this season. His best season was during his redshirt year back in 2019 when he wrestled at 165. He would finish that season 22-4, but since then he's at a super limited match count. I believe this is a nice option and maybe being in the lineup could really help his record out and match total. Then we move to 197 where I think some complications start again. In my opinion, I think Braxton Amos will for sure be the guy again here at 197 for the Badgers, and some might have predicted him to have a little better year than he did last year. And in my opinion, I think he did pretty well for his first season in the lineup. He was trained a ton of freestyle and Greco and probably never got used to the folk style training and building on it over his 2021 redshirt season. Now to add on to the complicated theory, they did bring in high recruit Mike Tauscher, who would probably redshirt now. However, let's move on to heavyweight to sort of keep explaining this. Trent Hilger announced he will be returning for one last season. I believe this was sometime after NCAAs. He is a 2-time All-American, but after having a 20-8 record, he failed to All-American again in 2022. My thoughts were that entire last season was that he probably thought he was going to be done, which would have allowed Amos to bump up, because simply based on his Greco and freestyle weights, he is probably trying to lose a significant amount of weight to make 197, which at moments in his wrestling you could kind of tell, and that others it probably wasn't an issue, and you couldn't even even really tell. But that is just wrestling, and sometimes you just gotta learn as you go through it over the years. Overall, I hope Amos makes some folk style adjustments, and I know he's wrestling a ton of Greco right now, so the best of luck to him in that. I also hope that Hilger can end his career on being an All-American and become a 3-time heavyweight All-American for Wisconsin. Plus, hopefully this will really benefit Tal Shaher in his redshirt year and jump into the lineup in 2023. And with 197 and 285 in the books, those are my thoughts and speculation on the Badgers in Madison, Wisconsin. I used the term web earlier at certain spots in the lineup, which basically just means I could see super interesting things happening between a multitude of options and possibilities, which shows some signs of a really deep and a really competitive team. Now, I wouldn't wish this on anyone, but if a sickness or injury happens to take someone out, the Wisconsin staff definitely has some interesting decisions and options to implement, which is fun sometimes to watch develop. But hopefully they stay strong and healthy entering and exiting next season, because they are always a fun team to watch and always come in swinging to every duel. Just to reiterate what I said earlier in the video, if you send me a comment about a team you want way too early analyzed, trust me, it's on the list. If you commented, it's there, I promise. And also with that said, be sure to leave a comment on your thoughts and your favorite team that you want added, or just your thoughts on the Wisconsin Badgers. I would love to hear what you have to say, and I would also love if you would like this video, and if you really enjoy the content, go ahead and hit that subscribe button. Now with all that said, I hope to see you on the next one. Take care, everybody.